PokerStatic.com. We bring you the interviews you want to hear. Now with your hosts, Bret Oliverio and Eric Bickel, the Poker Static Hot Seat.
What's up? Welcome to the Poker Static Hot Seat. Bret Oliverio, Eric Bickel, and joining us tonight, he's a BlueFirePoker pro, and of course a member of the November 9 that just went down. He finished 7th for a little over $1.3 million. Pretty damn impressive. What's up, Jason? What's happening?
Hey guys, how you doing? Thanks for having me on.
Of course. How does it feel my friend? I mean, now that all the pressure's off and it's all said and done, how has your life changed?
Some of it's pretty nice, actually, having a little bit of the pressure off. The first few months, I didn't really think much of. I mean, I was obviously really happy to make the November 9. I considered that a big deal, but I wasn't really nervous about any of it. It was just like, okay, let's, do interviews, let's do the rounds. The whole image standpoint of my career has changed a little bit, so now I'll, do what I've got to do and go from there. But then really that last couple weeks leading up, I mean, I'm not a guy who gets nervous about hardly anything. Still play shows with my band and it doesn't bother me a bit. And, I'm obviously somebody who talks a lot, but I got nervous. Like, I know I was just anxious. I was having a hard time sleeping. Everything was running through my head all the time. So, a little part of me is kind of happy for it all to be over just because I don't have that fear coming up. But at the same time, I mean, it was a pretty awesome thing, and I'm a little bit sad that I probably won't get to do that again. But in the end, I got a good amount of money for it and kind of got to fulfill at least 95% of one of my dreams in poker and in life. So I'm pretty happy about it.
Take us back to the night before the final table. I mean, we saw you literally walking from your room to the final table. We talked to you for a minute. You looked okay. Maybe, looked a little anxious. But take us like that night before. Did you go out to eat? When did you get to bed? What was your routine?
Well, the night before I had just had, nearly 100 people fly in, a lot of them that day, to watch me. And I think it was over 100 when it was all said and done. But right there that Friday, I had some people coming Saturday morning, some came Thursday night. So I really felt like I should try and at least go say hi to people. I did some interviews during the day on Friday. Also did some on Thursday, mostly ESPN stuff on Thursday and big photo shoot Thursday night. Friday night, after I got kind of the stuff I had to get taken care of out of the way, I decided I was just going to go down and hang out with a few of the people who came to see me. It was really sweet to have all these really good friends in Vegas and family as well. A lot of them, I would say the majority of them, the first time in Vegas. So I wanted to go hang out a little bit, and we just went down and played video poker and had some drinks at the Rio, and we're just hanging out. And I actually probably hung out a little longer than I thought I would, had a few more drinks than I thought I would. I was just having a lot of fun with everybody there, and not only that, but my mind was kind of off then. I was just mostly talking with friends about life and about, being out in Vegas and all that kind of stuff, and not really focused on the poker itself, coming up the next day, or even logistical stuff. Luckily, my wonderful wife took care of the majority of everybody getting out there at the right time and meeting up and all that. But I no longer really had any concerns about that, and I wasn't going to improve my strategy that evening in a couple hours. So it was nice. I actually just relaxed, and after having a couple drinks and a couple sleeping pills, I actually slept pretty well Friday night. I can't say the same for the nights before, but Friday night I slept just fine and got up. And, at that point, I kind of started to get nervous, mostly when I was, because I just kind of walked over there by myself or whatever, talked to Soy on the way. Yeah, it was just kind of a weird thing because it's all this craziness. And, pretty much the entire time I was in Vegas, I was being stopped everywhere, especially at the Rio, because so many people were out there to watch that anyway. Stopped by random, signing autographs, taking pictures, kissing babies, doing all that kind of stuff. And then, I just kind of walked up and, was on my own, and that was a little bit weird. And we were supposed to go into these crazy suites that are near the Penn and Teller Theater for a pregame meeting or whatever. So I said hi to a couple people, and people were mostly leaving me alone except for some friends I said hi to. And then I went to go walk into this room. You have to get buzzed in. And while I was waiting there, I just got swarmed. I mean, a mass of 30, 40 people, and I'm in this tiny little corner, just holding out hats and sweatshirts and cards and all this stuff trying to get me to sign it. It was some goofy thing I've seen on TV or in movies of, real celebrities being attacked. So I'm signing as much as I can. And then, like, some Rio staff came over and said he has to go and, like, physically pulled me into this other room. It was pretty nuts.
Very nice, though. Kind of a fun experience, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was something I never really expected to have happen, and I highly doubt will ever happen again. So it was pretty cool.
Don't rule it out. Now I wanted to ask you about the strategy. Now, Bret and I were there, and, of course, we know Phil, and we work with Phil on Poker Static, and you're a coach with Phil on BlueFirePoker. But I wanted to talk about, and I know that Annette was there. Annette Oberstad was there on, for the final table, and you were discussing strategy. It was very fascinating to see as the table would break at different times. You would just kind of walk over, and you had at your disposal Phil Galfond and Annette Oberstad, just two sort of brilliant minds in poker. Who else did you discuss strategy with? I think we met your friend Garrett, who was also there, in the months leading up to it. Because, I mean, already you're a renowned poker player yourself. You're a coach at Blue Fire. You pretty much had the strategy knocked down, I'm thinking, on your own.
Yeah, I mean, I was in a situation where I felt going into kind of these strategy sessions that I put together, with trusted friends who I think are really, really good at poker. I already kind of had a pretty strong intuition as to what I thought would be my best strategy, at least out of the gate. And then maybe some things would change as it went. But, yeah, I spoke primarily with Phil Galfond, Annette Overstad, Garrett Adelstein, who's G-Man on 2+2, and Scott Montgomery, who's Annette's boyfriend and former November Niner, obviously a good resource there. And I also spoke a little bit with Don Wynn, of Blue Fire SoCal Quest. And really I kind of went into these strategy sessions initially with Annette and Phil, thinking, well, I'm pretty sure I'm supposed to go nuts here because with, I went in with the short stack, 7.6 million. There's 1.2 million in dead money. Every hand, every orbit, right? Each hand. So we were putting in 1.2 every orbit. There's a ton of dead money. And even more than in normal spots where you should play really aggressively with that stack, I thought this was going to be a situation that was just ideal to be nuts. Because a lot of the chips were in the top two places, John Dolan and Jonathan Duhamel, or Duhamel, I'm not sure how to pronounce it still. He says it's fine either way. But the other guys, almost all of them, I could take out 50 to like 70, 80% of their chip stack if they were to call me and lose an all-in. So a huge chunk of the table, I could really, hack a leg out or really make it hard for them. And this is this kind of environment that, none of us have been in before. We all have just tons of people come out to watch us play. It's on national TV, the biggest stage we'll probably ever be on. And it was the kind of spot where I figured right out of the gate, most people are going to come in there kind of conservatively. Even if a couple other guys come out thinking, maybe the chip leader or Joe Chong or somebody like that, came out thinking, well, I'm going to, fire right away for the same reason. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to call off half their stack when I reshove on them. Like maybe they think they can open a lot of pots because people will be conservative. But if they think people are going to be conservative, they're probably going to fold to me too much. Long and the short of it, I think they're all good players, and I don't think most of them were going to make huge mistakes versus a standard shoving range. What I suspected and then really got confirmed by Annette and Phil was that I have to go well beyond standard shoving range, and I just kind of went nuts for a little while. At least the first orbit. I've told my Poker News, or somebody said it was on there, that I was all in like 4 out of the first 10 or 11 hands or something.
Right.
And that sounds about right. I just came out swinging and hoped to get some chips, and it did work pretty well for a while.
Yeah, what were some of those hands? Because Bret and I were there, and we were sitting in the stands with your family and friends, and you had a great cheering section. You really did. It was a lot of fun.
Awesome.
Everybody was drunk. It was great.
They were instructed to be drunk and loud by my wife, and they did not fail.
Right. But we didn't know what you were shoving, and so Bret and I were like, man, I wonder what he's shoving here. And do you remember at all? Because I don't believe they showed the first few shoves on ESPN.
No, they didn't. I think they only showed shoves I was called. I had at least one real hand at one point. I know I had Ace King versus Reisner, and I reshoved on him. It was his first open of the day. And then, that was his second open. His first open, I reshoved Ace 8 offsuit. Then his second open, a couple orbits later, I shoved Ace King. Thought it was a good spot. And then shortly again, he opened from early position and actually looked down at Ace 10 suited, and would have reshoved that in pretty much any other spot against him, because I really felt like, well, I think he's really good. He doesn't necessarily want to call off a bunch of chips pre-flop, and I understand that mentality. I'm a cash game player. I would much rather play post-flop poker too. I just didn't have that option because I was so short. But I had just reshoved on him like the first 2 times he opened, and I just really didn't feel like he was opening light, and I folded. And fortunately for me, I guess I found out he had pocket kings, so maybe a good live read by me or something. But more than anything, it was that I just shoved on him a few times. I figured, 1, he probably was going to start calling me lighter. 2, he's probably not opening that light, because now every time he opens, I shove on him. So thought you might tighten him up a little bit, and it just didn't seem like a good spot. There were certainly some, situations that were really standard, like one of the first shoves, or I don't know, one of the first shoves of the day, I don't know which one. I had like king jack suited, and it folded to me in the cutoff, and I had like 15 big blinds. Some people might like open small and like call a reship, or like I guess some people with a little bit bigger stacks would open and then fold, but to a reshove. But the thing is the blinds or the antes were so high relative to blinds that like there was just way too much dead money. I felt with a stack around 15 big blinds to do anything but shove. So and actually pretty sure I got away with that one. I think Dolan folded ace jack to me on the button. So yeah, I must have been in the hijack. I know I shoved 8 high once. But I don't even remember exactly what it was, 8 something of diamonds. I certainly was shoving light, but it was pretty much entirely situation based. If it folded to me in the right spot and I had a good stack for it, I shipped.
Right.
And if the right person opened, I had a couple people I wanted to target, I'd shove on them.
Plus, I would have to think that you were aware that the other players didn't want you to get chips. Just from everyone we've talked to, that everyone seemed to say, Jason's probably the best player at the table.
Well, I've heard that a couple times from a few people, but I didn't necessarily know that other November 9ers were saying that, and that's awesome. I, definitely flattered on that. I have had a couple of the November 9ers say to me, in situations where I didn't think they were lying either, where, maybe we were drinking or just hanging out, that they just really don't want to give me chips. And, that went into it maybe a little bit. It was kind of like, hey, maybe that'll make them fold slightly more. But I really don't think for the most part that was going to affect ranges all that much. What might affect like how likely they are to call me is it's possible that a few of the guys didn't necessarily, if they were going to err on a side, they'd probably think I was going to be tight with shoving ranges only because I'm a cash game player, not necessarily because I'm a nit or anything like that. But as a cash game player, I'm not necessarily going to know all the unexploitable shoves that sit and go players learn. And really, you'll find if you run a bunch of numbers that in general you can shove a lot wider than you'd instinctively think you can with short stacks. When there's antes involved, you can just shove a lot. Annette really helped me with a lot of that too, just because we didn't go through a ton of specific ranges, Annette, Phil, and I, but we did a little bit. More than anything, she reinforced a number of times that she really thinks people are going to fold way too much. And I came in there thinking that a little bit, and so did Phil, and she was, she's got the experience in that kind of situation, and she really thought people were just going to be too conservative. So we went for that strategy, and it seemed to work out until, I lost a flip.
Very nice. Well, why don't we do this? Because the last time that we had you on, and we talked before the event, obviously you didn't want to give away too much of your strategy, you didn't want to sort of comment on the other players and what maybe your impressions of them were, and I want to go through, maybe we'll go through it in the order that everybody was eliminated until we get to Duhamel. And you could kind of give us your impressions maybe beforehand, during the event, and then until we get till the end. I think that'd be fascinating. The first guy that went out, now you came in at 9th, so you were like free rolling in a sense. It was great for you. And
at least from public perception, it definitely was that standpoint. If I'd have gone out 9th, nobody would have said, oh, Jason failed. I would have not been too happy with it, but it would have been the way it was. But yeah, so from public perception, I was free rolling 100%, and that's pretty nice.
Right. So you get some chips, and then you get into a situation. I can't remember exactly what the hand was. I think you had pocket queens.
Oh, I remember it.
And Soy had ace king, I think. Soy Nguyen from California. So what was your impression of him? They sort of portrayed him on ESPN, at least, as sort of this naive kind of guy, doesn't really know what the hijack means, under the gun, you know. But then I saw that he had cashed before in a previous main event, so he has some experience.
And he just won an F-Tops event.
Yeah, and then he won his F-Tops. Although, to be fair, apparently the F-Tops he won, I think, was like a super turbo or something.
It was.
So it was just like a big shove fest. But, I mean, to be honest, from the play I've seen of him, I actually wouldn't have expected him to do very well in a tournament like that. Just because, at least his play at the final table, he seemed pretty tight, actually, and willing to do things like, flat for a pretty good chunk of his stack and check fold. Not saying it was necessarily terrible, but those usually aren't the types of players who, excel in shove or fold poker, which super turbos end up being. But congrats to him either way. I think that's awesome. I actually think he's a really nice guy. So a few things. First, the hand. folded him in on the button. At that point, I think he had like 7 million, and now I had like 9.5 or 10. So that had changed, that had swapped really, just from me winning hands without showdown shoving and him not really playing much. And yeah, folds him on the button, he shoves, and really, I would expect almost anybody who's pretty competent to have like a really wide range there on the button. You know, basically any ace, you know, any king, you know, maybe not him, maybe it'd just be like suited king 9 suited or better, you know, like probably still any ace, any pocket pair. But against that range, I mean, I look down at 2 queens and I'm jumping up and down, and you know what I mean? And put the money in, was just shocked to see ace king. I actually, bad read me, I thought he would have been more likely to open small with ace king to try and get action, but he didn't. So apparently I've had a slightly bad read on Soy twice. So any case, what I thought about him as a player, I thought very good for an amateur. He truly is an amateur, doesn't have that much experience. I mean, the guy can play some cards. I certainly saw some during the coverage where he stacked off really lightly, which, you know, changes at least what my opinion of was of him playing from like 15 to 9 players when he and I played at the same table. I actually thought he was really, really tight. Maybe he just was during that dynamic, or maybe, you know, he was just card dead. I'm not sure. But, you know, outside of like a few, you know, things where he's lacking on fundamentals, you know, like stacking off with top pair, second kicker type stuff for a ton of blinds, just not understanding his equity versus ranges. I think he's, you know, pretty damn good for an amateur. He certainly is aggressive from everything I saw in the coverage, and really if you're going to have a shot as, you know, somebody who doesn't play a ton of poker, the way to do it is to be super aggro. You really can't play very passive poker unless you're really good and really good at hand reading. So, yeah, and really, really nice guy. Apparently back at his job and just grinded the 9 to 5.
Wow,
Tried to quit, his boss wouldn't let him.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I guess his boss like, nope, you've been here too long. You take as much time as you need. I know you have a lot going on right now, but I'm expecting you back here. And he's doing it. So, props to him.
All right, so you eliminate Soy, and gets a nice ovation and everything. That's a great story. He clocks $800,000, like $811,000, something like that. And then Matthew Jarvis, he's your next victim. You eliminate him in 8th place.
Actually, I didn't. Grinder eliminated him.
Oh, Grinder does. That's right. That's right. Go ahead and talk about.
That was a crazy hand.
Talk about Jarvis and talk about that hand.
Yeah, Jarvis. Awesome guy. You know, I'm kind of going to say that quite a bit. Sorry, but I actually really do like all the November Niners, and we all kind of have a little bit of like a kind of fraternity kind of bond, just like it's a weird little club we're in. But seriously, Jarvis is one of the nicer people I've ever met. He's Canadian, so maybe that's not a big surprise. They're all just really nice guys, I guess. But yeah, big fan of him, and he's a good card player for sure. It's unfortunate he went out 8th. You know, I certainly think he deserved better than that, but you know, it was a tough final table, and it's the way it worked out. The last hand was a little crazy. Just basically he and Grinder got an ace-queen versus 9s. It actually was like Duhamel opened, I believe. Grinder flatted with ace-queen. Jarvis shoved like a 20 big blind stack or a reshove stack, and Grinder called. And it was Jarvis's 9s versus, you know, his queens. I folded jack-queen. Not a big deal, easy fold, but it was kind of surprising then to see a queen-queen X flop. But then the 9 turn for Jarvis, river ace for Grinder. So, I mean, it's certainly made for good TV. I've actually been told that's exactly basically the way the hand went down that eliminated Ivy in the Moneymaker year.
Right.
Ivy went out like whatever it was, somewhere between 10th and 18th or something. And yeah, but I think the money went all in on the turn in that hand. Mm-hmm. However, it went down, Ivy had the best hand, and Moneymaker sucked out.
So what are your thoughts on Grinder's play there with ace-queen?
I actually think it's correct. You know, every step. If I remember correctly, there were quite a few reshove stacks behind him, at least with Jarvis and then me still to act. And Candio might have even had a reshove stack, although to be honest, Candio wouldn't have been reshoving there at all, like not even close to light. But I think, you know, with stack sizes, Grinder's only real play against Duhamel, in a vacuum anyway, unless he's 3-betting like a ton and he needs to balance. You know, he really should be flatting an early position raise with ace-queen. They had deeper stacks. And then he gets the added benefit of if Jarvis, you know, or myself does reshove, it's a pretty easy call, I think. And so, yeah, the way Grinder played it, I think, is 100% correct. And I think Jarvis should have been reshoving 9s there. I think it's just short stack tournament poker. I mean, ship the money in and see who wins.
And, of course, you're thrilled because, I mean, as much as you like Jarvis, you move up another spot, and we're all doing the math out in the stands cheering you on. You got to be thinking that inside, too. What's going on in your mind? You're like, oh, my God, I've just moved up 2 spots. You know, I've basically made $500,000 today. Pretty good day's work so far.
Yeah, funny part is I did not know how much I had moved up in pay, which is a little ridiculous to say.
Yeah.
But basically, beforehand, I had looked at the pay schedule and stuff because it can have strategic implications for sure with when you take ICM into consideration. But looking at it, I mean, it really was pretty small pay jumps till top 2 or 3. So it kind of seemed like the, really correct strategy was just going to be play for top 3 and don't worry about it until then. So I kind of tried to not really look at it all that much. But I was happy to see that another person had gone out. I was sad it was Jarvis, and I was a little sad that Grinder had chips because I hadn't seen Grinder play with chips yet. And I had been told he'll, play very loose and very well. So I wasn't pumped about that, but it was pretty cool that I was at least guaranteed 7th at that point. And, seeing people drop off and them not being me just in general felt pretty good. I actually didn't find out the exact amount of money until a few days ago, which is a little nuts. I knew it was roughly $500,000 though, and I was pretty happy about that. It was certainly a good pay jump. Yeah, I guess that's all I got to say about that. I'm just still rambling for no reason.
Let me ask you about, I was talking with somebody about this. Like, why not go into a room right before the tournament with, all the November 9 with a team of attorneys, bring all your attorneys, and just make an agreement. Each walk away with $3 million or however the math comes out, and it's life-changing money for everyone. Was there any thought of suggesting that, or did that come from anybody? I mean, 'cause that would make sense to me, and I would probably take it, especially the way the stacks were.
The problem is because of stacks is why you just can't do it. I mean, we could easily get me to agree to that. And Soy and a few others because we have short stacks. But, I mean, come on, we do know it's like 9 times as many chips as me. It's just not going to happen. And if you're going to try and find another way to balance it out, if you did it on straight chip EV, just like how many chips are left in play, figure out your percentage of what you have, there's no way I'd take that ever because that actually gives me like 800,000. And it gives Duhamel more than first place money. So you can't do that, so you got to make some adjustment. There aren't any perfect models, but even if we could find one that just evened me out, it's actually going to be, or even it out, it's going to be hard to convince me in that situation because I think my EV was quite a bit higher than what my, direct chips would say. And Duhamel is not going to take anything where we really spread the money out, and probably not Dolan either. So it's just too hard to come to an agreement, unfortunately. It's definitely a spot where you'd like to even out a bunch of variants, but you can't really do much about it. What you can do is make some swaps. I know people were walking around trying to do that. I had some offers, but they just weren't situations I was looking to get into. With the spots that I maybe consider doing it, going into the final table, they're with guys that had so much more, so many more chips than me that they're just going to want way too good of a price for me to ever get it or, give that kind of deal. So, it just doesn't work out, unfortunately.
Even when there was 6 or 7 players or 7 players left, during the breaks, you guys never talked about anything like that?
No, at 7 players, it might have been a time that would have worked out with me anyway, because I had similar-ish stacks to a few other players that I have respect for, and might be looking to even out variants. And so maybe that would have been a spot for me to approach it. But honestly, I was walking around thinking about poker, thinking about my next move. I was excited because with 7 players left. I got over 20 million at, certain points. I was starting to get a stack where I could maybe play a little bit of post-flop poker, and, I was feeling good. I was just hoping, man, if I can, win one more flip or just, play a few hands post-flop and win a few uncontested, I could put myself in a spot to really make a run at winning this, and that's all I could think about.
It doesn't sound like from hearing you that the stage affected you at all, Jason, but, I mean, it's such a surreal thing. You kind of have to see it to believe it. But you're in there in the theater, you got all these people watching, you got all the cameras there, you got Norman Chad over in the corner, you got the grinders at the table, this TV personality, Mattisau's behind him cheering him on. I mean, it's just crazy scene. How much did that affect your actual play? It doesn't seem like it did from talking to you.
No, I don't think it affected my play at all. It definitely was a lot crazier than I expected. I mean, I knew it'd be this big, fun, nutso moment, and I've seen it on TV, but it was a lot crazier than it even looks on TV. That many people in the crowd cheering you on. I had some things that relaxed me a little bit, like my amazing group of friends out in the crowd and family just cheering me on. Like, those guys were nuts. Like, anytime anybody cheered for somebody, my group, like, had to one-up them, and they were sitting further away than almost everybody. And they were so loud and so awesome. It really helped a lot, because it's a pretty intimidating kind of scene if I were to sit and think about it. How do I compete, in this kind of stage? Not necessarily in poker, but just like as a personality or something. But they made it easy because they made me feel like a star out there, I guess. It's when the cards are in your hand and you're holding the chips, and you've been playing as long as I have. I don't know. I was just playing poker. It was still slightly nervous experience first sitting down, a few things like that. But after a little bit, it just, was what it was. I was there playing poker just in a different environment than normal.
All right, so you go out 7th then, and I hate to have you relive the hand, but I'm sure it's one that you'll talk about forever. You end up with Ace-King, right, against Joseph Chong. Why don't you talk about how that went down?
Yeah, great spot to pick up Ace-King for me. Basically, I know the hand before I had shoved, and my stack it was either the hand before or 2 hands before. I'm pretty sure it was the exact hand before. And I had a stack that the hand before, I don't even remember what I had, but it made most sense for me to be open shoving, at least with certain hands. And once I picked up, that orbits, or, that hands worth of blinds and antes, it was a spot where now my stack was more of a reshove stack. So it wasn't a hand that I would be just open shoving. I would be raising small and either calling it off or folding. And I actually came into play when I looked down at Ace-King. I was like, damn. And right away I thought, man, is it going to be obvious if now I open small? And I figured against the guys who were left to act, I was in late position, which is also nice because, they expect me to have an even wider range. But with the guys left to act, they would probably just recognize that my stack size had changed. And so now I'm just going to be opening small. And besides, if anything, maybe they'll think, well, I'm sure he wants to play post-flop poker. He's a cash game guy. Maybe he's trying to open a little wider here. So I, opened small, and Joe 3-bet, and it was a committing amount. I've heard people say he snap-called with the 10s. That's surprising. I mean, when he 3-bet, he knew he was calling. It didn't really matter. The reason he 3-bets smaller than a shove is because he has stacks to his left that cover him, and he doesn't want to, shove with really anything there, because even with, like, aces, you'd rather make it small and make them think they have fold equity if they pick up ace-king or something, right? So, any case, he 3-bet ISO'd. It came back around to me. I shoved pretty quickly because there's no point in screwing around there. He knows he's getting it in, yada, yada. And, it was kind of sad to see 2 10s. I thought there's a really good, that's a spot where he really should be, and I'm sure is, 3-betting me with, like, ace-10 suited or better and just getting it in, ace-jack or better. Maybe any pair, probably not. Maybe not, like, the smallest pairs, etc. But just a really wide range. And you might think, is he ever going to get, am I ever going to shove ace-10? How can he ever be doing well with ace-jack? But there's more to it than that. He has to be able to 3-bet me and have me fold sometimes. There's just added value in that. And he may as well do it with, when he does it, since he has to call it off the rest of the time, he just will do it with good hands, and he'll have to just expand his value range. In any case, I was kind of sad to see 2 10s, and he turned to me, actually, and said something like, man, how do you have ace-king there? It's so unfair. It's such a cooler. And I turned in, like, how do you have 2 10s? It's just unfair on both sides, Yeah. And, I was really excited. There was obviously a 50-50 shot I go out, or a little worse than that. And, but it was, I was going to be in a flip for 34 million chip pot when I came into the day with 7.6 million and really high blinds and antes. I was really happy to be into that situation, and it felt really good when the flop came down king, king, queen. Thought I could not believe that I was still winning flips, and really thought, like, when I saw that flop, I actually thought there's a really good shot I'm going to win this tournament. Then the jack on the turn, and I got the, like, irrational fear just now that he picked up a little bit of extra outs. I mean, all he picked up was 4 outs because he gave me an open-ender, but an ace voted me up. So I was like, okay, so now he has 6 outs, whatever, it's not that big of a deal. But I got the irrational fear, like, I feel it coming, I can't run this good this long. It really has nothing to do with each other, how I've done in the past. But, then he banked his straight on the river, and I was out. Is what it is.
And I watched your reaction a couple times, and you didn't seem too surprised, actually. It was almost like, I don't know.
It's poker.
I would have just dropped my head.
I've played so much poker, so many all-ins. Especially in PLO. I mean, you're all in all the time, so you see it all happen, and it was just okay. I didn't get to win this time, and it's time to move on. It would have been another really, really fun all-in to win. If you're ever going to run crazy hot, that's the time to do it at the final table, the biggest tournament in the world. But, my luck ran up, and, it was time to go. Wasn't happy about it, of course, but what are you going to do besides shake hands and be happy, just banked $1.3 million and have 100 good friends in town ready to tear it up with you.
Yeah, I want to go through that. I want to talk about your night on the town afterwards. But real quick, I just want to kind of wrap up you just kind of discussing the other players. John Dolan then went out 6th. And Dolan came in, what, 2nd in chips?
Yeah, he had a ton of chips. I think he ran bad. I mean, gosh, he had a pretty nasty hand with jacks against Chong's ace-10 of clubs. It's kind of a weird hand. I mean, Dolan's hand was pretty face-up. So when Chong bet the river big, I think the bet size was great by Chong, by the way. I actually think his 3-bet preflop is bad. I'm sure he'll disagree with me on that. But I think that his bet size on the river, I think he played the hand perfectly, to be honest. I mean, Dolan's hand was face up, but when he hit on the river, Chong has the reputation that I'm sure Dolan had to at least consider that, hey, Chong knows what I have, more or less. And so, is he betting big to move me off or betting big to get a call because he hit? And it's like a flip a coin spot for Dolan. It's really tough. So, he ran bad in a few key hands and went out. Really nice kid. Very good poker player. I didn't talk with him a ton. I talked to him some. He's a little more, slightly more quiet, and at least than me, but everybody is than me. And yeah, nice guy, good poker player. Wish him all the best.
Is he an online guy? Does he play a lot of tournaments, or what's his deal?
Yeah, I believe his online name is like JRD123, or I don't know what it is. I know it's JRD. He plays tournaments. He's a tourney guy. I saw him at the NAPT, said hi to him briefly as well, and yeah, nice guy. I'm sure he'll do well in tournaments.
Right. And then the grinder goes out 5th. Of course, he has the huge cheering section. There was even some question as to whether or not there wasn't a conspiracy that they had all these grinder guys up there on the stage so close to all the action.
It was insane how many people he had on stage. We all got 10 wristbands, and they were hardcore about how many people could be up there. But somehow, half the stage had grinder shirts on. I'm sure it's just because, Madasows of the world get to sit on stage, would be my guess. They're just, VIPs or whatever.
Right.
And so they're allowed up there, and most of them are just far more likely to cheer for grinder because they're friends.
Right. So he goes out 5th, and I don't know, what were your impressions of the grinder? People seem to be sort of split on him, but yet he still comes up with these incredible results. He seemed to play very, very well at the final table.
Oh, the guy can play some cards. There's no question about it. I don't agree with everything he does. To be perfectly honest, I'm sure he doesn't agree with everything I do. It's how poker is, and it's part of what makes it fun. There's different ways to play it. But I think he does play very well, specifically with his style. I'm guessing his style works really, really well against a lot of people. And against some people, I think, some of the, really good players out there, he's maybe a little exploitable. But, he can't be. He's certainly doing a lot of things right. And don't get me wrong, I think he plays very good against good players, too. I just think part of his style is kind of, tuned to take advantage of slightly lower caliber players, not just like big fish.
Can you give one example?
He's also...
Jason, can you give one example?
Okay, yeah, I guess I can. One thing that he'll do, this is a little more advanced, but he tends to bet for protection a lot more than almost anybody that you'll see play in No Limit Hold'em. So a good example would be if he flops middle pair, he might just bet 3 streets with it. Not necessarily in spots where it's very clear value bet or a very clear check fold or check call or anything like that. Just in spots where it's kind of it'd be really nasty if he got raised and there might not be value in it. He just always seems to bet. He just does, even in position where a lot of people might check, maybe they bet the flop with middle pair, and now they'll check back the turn, or bet the flop with nothing, turn middle pair, maybe check it back, and try and pick off a river bluff because, maybe draws will miss, and so somebody could have check called with the draw and then bluff at the river when you check back turn. It makes a lot of sense. It's a pretty standard line in No Limit Hold'em. He'll turn that middle pair and just bet again. And it's a spot where if he gets check raised in those things, his nose is wide open. But I think what he does is he just kind of bets when in doubt and does a really good job of making decisions depending on how they react. So, if they do check raise in those spots, I think he's just going to call more often when it's the correct play than most people will. So he does some things that I think like that leave him open for exploitation against really good players. But in a tournament setting, those are actually really hard things to exploit. And second of all, I think he handles it as well as really anybody I've seen who does bet in just spots that I think fundamentally are great betting spots. He, really handles it well. So outside of that, really nice guy. On TV, he's kind of, like flaring his nostrils, grunting grinder, man, and that's kind of the way he is at the table, at least when, the pressure's on, main event type stuff, final table. I've played with him since, like an NAPT shootout that recently took place, and at that table, he and I were both drinking and just having fun. But yeah, away from the table, he is a genuinely nice guy, a family guy, really seems to love his kids and his wife, and has no problem showing it. He's still the grinder, and he's still, a big tough guy, a little bit there, but yeah, I'm actually a pretty big fan of him now that I've gotten to know him a little bit more, and yeah, wish him all the best.
Very nice. Now, the Italian goes out fourth. Filippo Candio, is that how you pronounce his name? What was your impression of
Filippo Candio or whatever, yeah.
What was your impression?
First of all, nice guy. I'm saying that about everybody, but it's true. He and I talked quite a bit a couple days beforehand, on Thursday before the final table, when we were doing like the shoot on top of the Rio, where they've got the Vegas skyline in the background and all that stuff. He and I talked quite a bit. Seems like actually a pretty humble guy for a guy who on TV was running around screaming stuff. He was saying, hey, I played some hands bad. I don't think I'm the greatest player in the world, but I think I'm pretty good. Stuff like that. And, props to him. Very few poker players, are pretty humble about stuff like that. I know I'm not as humble as I should be when it comes to poker. So, that's all well and good. I think he's pretty good. To be honest, I don't think he's great, but I don't think he thinks he's great either. And, I think he probably has a lot of potential to get a lot better. I don't know how long he's been playing, but he's obviously done really well, probably going mostly off of natural talent. So my guess would be the more time he puts in, the better he'll do. And, he's kind of an Italian icon right now. He's got to be one of the most successful poker players to come out of Italy around. I know, like, Max Pescatori's done really well, too, but I'm not even sure if he's actually from Italy. I think he's just Italian and from the East Coast. So, yeah, I think he'll have a good poker career ahead of him, if nothing else, because, he's super marketable, fun to watch on TV. Charming guy, and he's from a country that's really getting into poker right now. So, all
right, so he does great. He's actually eliminated in fourth. He collects $3 million, and then the guy that knocked you out, who was very aggressive, I thought, didn't know much about him, seemed to be a very good player, was Joseph Chong next. What was your impression of Joseph? Was he a student? Who was he a student of, Bret? Joe Chong.
He was wasn't he with like Bodog Ari and Maven and all those guys? I believe he was.
I believe it.
He has
I know
a lot of he has a lot of online tournament experience.
He does. I know the guy's grinded a ton of tournaments. Even when I was just in L.A. for the NAPT, he and I were talking back and forth, talking about maybe, going out and getting sushi or hanging out, having a few drinks. And he was always stuck in a tournament online, like in between live events. Right after he cashes for a massive amount of money, he was grinding every F-Tops tournament and every Sunday tournament and all this. And guy's just a grinder. And, kid's really, really good. As far as tournament players go, he's one of the best I've ever played with. Large end of front end aggression, but still tricky, and a good hand reader. Not a combination you see all that often. Very often guys who are really front end aggressive, meaning like bet flop, double barrel a lot, open a lot, 3-bet a lot, not any of the tricky stuff, or not back end aggression. I think A. Jones actually coined these terms, and they're good. Back end aggression would be more like check raising turns, things like that, donk betting, things like that. But a lot of guys you see do, the front-end stuff well, which is really important in tournaments. Most of them you don't necessarily see play really trickily. And kid's also fearless and, nice guy. I talked to him, almost as much as anybody else at the final table during the break. Maybe a couple guys a little more, but talked to him quite a bit, hung out with him in a few spots. Nice, down-to-earth kid who, wanted to collect his money and move on. And, if he keeps playing tournament poker, you're going to see results from him. Because, 1, he plays a ton, and 2, he's really good.
Talk about the 6-bet or what, the ace-7 hand where he 6-bet shoved on the queens. sort of
I
analyze
still
that hand for
haven't
us.
seen it on TV, which is maybe a little ridiculous, but I kind of, ate, slept, breathe the World Series of Poker for 4 months. So I didn't really watch the final table coverage. I saw through myself, to be honest. I'm just super vain, I guess, and quit watching at that point. But I've only seen it once, and I'm sure I'll watch that final table 100 times. I just haven't yet. And, but from what I've heard about it, I can't go into it too much with strategy because I don't know all the details. I don't know exact bet sizing, etc. But I will say it's pretty unlikely it was that bad. I've heard some people call it a big blow-up. Maybe after I watch it all, I'll get all the details and, try and catch up on the hands that took place between when I went out and when that happened. Maybe I'll agree with them. But, just on the surface from the dynamic I saw at the table, I don't know. Duhamel was definitely making it clear while I was still there that he was going to 3-bet the big stacks who were on his right. So Chong, Dolan, if I'd have won that pot, me, and he was making it clear that he was going to do that, and it's a good play. Puts us in pretty gross spot. And so if he's doing that wide and not necessarily balanced, Chong goes ahead and 4-bets, and it's a spot where Duhamel certainly knows that Chong's going to do that light. Chong was shown on TV doing that light. Mm-hmm. I don't see any reason for Duhamel not to think that, this can be a bluff and that he can get him off it with a 5-bet. So when he 5-bets, a lot of people say, well, he's never going to 5-bet without it. I just kind of doubt that. And there's another thing to think about here. I think there's a pretty good chance that Duhamel flats some 4-bets. So, most people just think, all they're thinking about was the decision to 5-bet. But there's also the decision to, flat the 4-bet or to 5-bet or to fold. And if he ever flats 4-bets, I actually think it makes the shove better because he's likely going to flat the 4-bet. I might have said 5-bet 4, but if he ever flats a 4-bets, he might flat it with aces, maybe even kings. And not only those hands, but the hands like pocket tens that, he 3-bet because it's a good hand, kind of his expanded value range for 3-betting. Maybe even a hand like pocket jacks just because, he's not sure if he's willing to get in jacks for that many blinds. I think he would have gone with it. But in any case, he's going to now be flatting some of his big hands, which takes them out of his 5-betting range. So, if he flats aces half the time and kings half the time, you're cutting down on combos that he's willing to get in, and it's not like he's getting in ace-jack here. So it's pretty much like ace-king, now make it half the combos of aces and kings, queens, and maybe jacks. So realistically, I think that, puts Chong in a spot where he, really is going to view Duhamel's range as super-duper polarized. It's possible he was never 5-betting air to begin with, in which case all this is irrelevant. I think he probably would have. And so, I kind of don't think the shove with ace-7's too bad. I think it, might have even been the best play.
Wow.
Not to mention he could have still folded the queens. I mean, obviously that's not the right play, but
yeah, he wasn't. I don't think he was
all that
ever
money
considering
there.
folding the play.
Right. But
Yeah,
I hear
what you're
a possibility.
saying there. That can
There's so much
go
money.
I agree, especially because you had Racer sitting there with a way shorter stack than those two, as far as I know. Maybe he had 20 million or something, and those guys had these massive 90 million stacks or whatever. So, yeah, that can come into play a little bit if people are thinking about that. And it's certainly possible Duhamel would be thinking about that. The thing is, though, is when he makes the decision to 5-bet, it's just so unlikely that he's 5-betting and then having to face a tough decision when he gets 6-bet. That's just ridiculous for him to 5-bet jacks and then bank. But realistically, I mean, we all saw him 4-bet jacks deep against Matt Affleck, and Matt Affleck flatted with his aces. But I know people were saying, was he getting in the jacks or not, or what was going on there? Because in most of the time in a tournament with that many blinds, that close to the final table, it's not a very good idea to be 4-bet getting in jacks. But I guess that maybe was in Chong's mind. I think more than anything, he thought he was really polarized, and it's also one of those spots with that many blinds, last 3 players at the final table. I mean, shit, man, he's just not getting in that many hands for his tournament life. Combine that with the fact that sometimes a flat 4-bets, it seemed pretty good to me.
Huh. All right, so then they get to heads up, and I know you didn't see it, but it was between Racner and Duhamel. And Duhamel, first of all, has got to be feeling great. He gets there. He's the chip leader. He gets the heads up. That's awesome. He's got a huge chip lead. And, I actually didn't watch it either, but Bret and I read some of the reports, and it seemed like Racner did a lot of limping on the button and didn't seem to have the proper strategy, frankly, for heads up. And Duhamel just sort of ran him over, from what we understand.
To be honest, and I know this kind of sucks because, I should have more information, but if I'd have to see it to say whether or not I think that's bad. I actually think with certain stack sizes, it can be pretty good to be limping a fair amount, especially if he has, if he has stack sizes that, whenever he raises, Duhamel's, probably just going to jam or fold. It actually makes sense to include some limping hands. That's specifically if Racner thinks he is quite a bit better post-flop player than Duhamel, and I have no comment on that either way. I honestly just don't even know. But, yeah, there can be reasons to limp. I do think it's possible, though, from what I saw, that Racner probably is not getting enough money in pre-flop in general. In late tournaments against aggro players. Don't get me wrong, against weaker players, I'm not playing that game either. But when you're up against good players, usually you just kind of have to ship a bunch of money in on them, or ship your chips in when you have short stacks. So it usually is just as close to correct as the best play as you can get. There's certainly some room that a lot of full-time tournament guys. There's some room for some plays that a lot of them never use. Just little things like flatting out of the big blind with 22 blinds, things like that to baby opens. But for the most part, a lot of that shove fold stuff you kind of got to be doing, and I think it's possible he doesn't do a lot of that.
Right. Gotcha.
So I kind of want to ask you about yourself. You collect your payout. I guess you already collected the 800. I guess you pick up another 500. How exactly did you take a check, wire? I've heard stories of people taking cash. I mean.
Oh yeah, I just brought a bunch of duffel bags in.
Why not?
I wired it for sure. I actually didn't even wire it until Monday during the heads up. I walked out the Penn and Teller Theater to a huge crowd of friends, all having a lot of fun. They were many hours ahead of me on having fun. And, had the media all there with the lights and, hey, let's do a bunch of interviews and did all that. And then they were like, okay, do you want to take care of this payout now or would you rather do it later? And it's like, well, sending it to my account at 10:30 p.m. on Saturday right now isn't doing me any good anyway. So I was like, see ya, I'm going to go hang out. So collected it, and right now, it's nice to have extra money around. I'm going to add a little bit back into my online roll because I haven't been playing with a big roll in the last 6 months or so. Not a ton. I'm still going to do, I actually think I'm probably going to grind a fair amount of 5, 10, and 10, 20 for a little bit. A lot of that just because I haven't played a lot of poker in a few months, at least online cash. So while now I'm back to having, as much of a bankroll as I want for, 25, 50 games, I'm maybe a little rusty. I don't really think so, but, I may as well grind. So do that. My wife and I are going to buy a house. We've been looking for a long time. We already own a townhouse that we'll hang on to and rent. But, it's time to move on to a bigger place, and this just makes it all that much easier. So we can just put a ton down and, move on. So I'm pretty excited about that. And
what about the guys who had pieces of you? How quickly do you ship them their money? What's that dynamic? It's always interesting to me.
Yeah, I pretty much just try and do it right away. I haven't done it yet. And it has been a little while now. But I was in LA. Basically, I left Vegas Wednesday night after the final table, and came home for one day in Minneapolis. Went to just TV studios and stuff, and did interviews I wanted to do in studio all day that Thursday. Flew out Friday, went to LA, was there until Wednesday or whatever it was of this last week. So I've now had a few days to catch my breath when, we were checking out some of these houses, getting all that stuff figured out. Long and short of it, I still haven't done it, but I actually probably will send the checks off tomorrow, so I do it before Thanksgiving. Just send out checks so that there's a paper trail or whatever, so that I can tell the IRS, hey, check it out, I paid these guys.
Right.
And move on from there. But still, definitely had some percentages out there, more than I'm used to. But I think most of those were the right decisions at the time. Maybe not all of them, but definitely the swaps I made certainly were just reducing variance. And there were people I really like, so, happy to make them a little bit of money. And I still, between, cashing at 1.3 something and endorsement stuff and all that, I came away pretty well from this event, so it'll be all right. Now I just have to put massive amounts of money aside for taxes. Woohoo!
Right.
More than I already feel like I pay a lot in taxes, but this year it's going to be a lot. But as far as I'm concerned, that's one of those good problems to have, right?
Now you talk about endorsements, and I know that you're all patched up with PokerStars, and you did a nice deal with them. But now that the final table has ended, you're a free agent. Is that correct?
I am. As of right now, I am 100% a free agent. Honestly, my entire experience with PokerStars was awesome, and I really like the site, and I'm not wearing their patch, not like company manning this. Big fan of PokerStars, there's no question about it, but I do play at other sites as well, including Full Tilt, which I see you guys are patched up with, and also think they're a great site. But as of right now, I don't have a long-term deal with Stars. It's possible that'll happen down the road, but as of right now, yeah, I'm a free agent, and certainly gonna take a look at offers, things like that. And if anybody's got anything they want to send to me, let me know. I got a ton of offers for not only poker site related stuff, but other stuff leading up to the final table. But I couldn't take any of those because Stars had me for the final table. So anything since, now I'm open, and we'll see where it goes from there. For right now, I'm still a cash game player, and I'll be definitely playing more live tournaments since this recent success. If nothing else, I'm going to go to the PCA and some things like that. I'm, part of my deal included some packages and all that. And, I'm really liking live tournaments right now when I didn't always love them in the past. Right now I am, because I just ran great in one. Right. So I'll definitely be out traveling more. And plus, I just, I'm a pretty social guy. I like traveling, and I like meeting new people. And really, when you're on the tournament road, you get to do that quite a bit. So I've had fun with that, and I'll, ride that as long as I can. But I'll still play cash games for my day-to-day.
Very nice. Let's talk about that night afterwards real quick. You didn't know what to do, so I know that you rented a suite, a penthouse at Palm's place, right? What was that night like?
Yeah, I basically, finished all these interviews, and I was getting pretty late. And I just had this huge crew of people following me. The funny part is, a few days later I realized, damn, I had a lot of people missing from there, but I just didn't even think about it. I just had like 60, 70 people following me going, hey, what now? And I was like, holy shit, I haven't thought about this at all. So we wandered up to my room at the Rio, because they comped us with, big suites and stuff. And so we went up there, but it's not that big. We had way too many people in it. It's like, okay. People did some little speeches and took some pictures, and all was fun, and we had hugs and good times, and decided we better figure out something to do tonight. These guys have, while they've been drinking since 10 in the morning, they know how to tear it up, and they're in Vegas, so let's figure it out. And now at that point it's like midnight, Saturday in Vegas, getting a bunch of tables for an hour and a half, if we can even do it, doesn't sound like a great idea. So going out to the clubs is basically out. What the hell should we do? Do we really want to drag this many people around the strip? So yeah, first, I thought of just renting a penthouse at Palm's Place. Been to some rockin' parties at penthouses in Palm's Place. So, hit up a few contacts that I had and got something put together. They only had one left that night. Not quite as big as the ones I've been to, but it was still pretty big. And just went up there, sent a bellman to go get a ton of booze and, everything people wanted. And, we just tore it up all night and really had a good time. So it worked out pretty well.
Very nice. You probably, you know what?
That's awesome.
As expensive as it probably was, and I'm sure you spent a lot of money, I bet you it was cheaper than going to some club and paying $500 a bottle of Grey Goose.
God.
You know what I mean?
For sure.
Yeah, it probably was. I did spend a ton of money that night. A little more reckless than I tend to be with cash that night, but I just cashed for a bunch. Had so many, people in town like rooting me on and just being awesome, and wanted to at least show them a good time, especially with a lot of people that being their first time in Vegas, even if they've been there before. Not many people have had that kind of experience, I just wanted to go get a big rockin' penthouse way up top and tear it up. But one kind of fun part about it was late in the night, we're tearing up, we're really loud, got the stereo going, some security came to the door. We're like, hey, we got to have you guys keep it down, yada, yada, yada. And I was like, no, I don't think so. Like, when I booked this, they knew what this was for. The bellman's been getting our booze and everything, and I had talked to the front desk. I know people at this place just because I've stayed there a few summers in a row. Not like I'm well connected there, but I know a few guys, and I was like, I've been to parties here, and as far as I was told this would be fine. And they were like, well, okay, and they walked off, and later they came back and apologized for even bugging me. But the funny part was about it was that, like, so I walked back in, my friends had to run out and get me, like, oh, security's here, just like the scene I've had a million times from, like, age 17 on, in hotel rooms and wherever you are, dorm rooms, even in the house, our house when the cops show up or whatever, right?
Right.
And it's like, shit, this is all being shut down. And I walk back in, all the music's down, and my buddy turns, he's like, hey, so, he's like, I guess we just got to keep the stereo off. I'm like, crank it back up, and just walked outside, and they tore it up later. My friend was like, man, as many times we've been shut down in our life, to have you come walking back in from security and say, nope, we're fine, was just like a big win for, everybody there. So
that's awesome.
It was a pretty good night. We had a lot of fun.
Very nice.
That's great, man.
Very nice.
Well, listen, for people that, maybe are checking out this interview for the first time, it couldn't happen to a nicer guy, by the way. So congratulations.
Much appreciated.
That's awesome. It's awesome for you. Of course, Blue Fire. I mean, it has to be awesome for Blue Fire as well. So just congratulations all around.
Good stuff anyway. But yeah, thank you very much. I really do appreciate it. I consider myself a pretty fortunate guy. I've had a lot of people say stuff like, yeah, you are really lucky, yada yada, but you work really hard. And yeah, I do work hard, but I'm also really lucky. So I don't know, when you combine hard work and luck, it works out pretty well.
Very nice. So if people want to read your blog, or they want to get coaching or see your videos, it's all at Blue Fire, right?
Yeah, absolutely. BlueFirePoker. It's Phil Galfon's training site. If anybody out there hasn't seen it before, I'm sure a lot of you guys will have heard some of this before. Sorry, but yeah, it's got to be the best training site out there. If nothing else, it's got Phil's name attached to it. Phil does a video every week, and he's just amazing. Not only a nosebleed player who's destroyed the games, but he really, really explains the game well. He and I have talked a ton of poker over the years. He's even formally coached me at certain points, and I don't think there can be a better poker teacher out there. I just really would have a hard time finding anybody saying there is. So you're pretty crazy, in my opinion, if you're serious about poker and you don't belong to Blue Fire. Of course, in addition to Phil, we have more than that. We have me making videos there. Neiman Ken Cray, Samolias, who has torn up the games for a long time now. Dr. Jiggy, who's outstanding. And we're adding new members. Recently got, Alex Martin and, a few other people. And the one thing I kind of wanted to mention is, if you haven't seen it yet, we got the new site out. We've had some problems with, our forums weren't perfect, and, our software was maybe a little bit dated, but we've got a brand new site coming out here that is just outstanding. It's 100% up to speed with the times. It's probably better than any other site, on the front end and back end. It's a beautiful site. And we got the Sit and Go team launching. So yeah, we're finally going to have real tournament content at Blue Fire. We've been focused on cash games. We've been looking to get into the tournament teaching realm for quite a while here, but Phil's pretty darn picky about who he allows to make videos. Kind of sound like I'm tooting my own horn because he has me make videos, and maybe I am a little bit, but there have been a ton of auditions for sit and goes, from MTTs, etc., and it's just really hard to find video producers that Phil thinks not only are very good, there's a fair amount of poker players who are very good, but really can explain the game well and teach well. So to keep the quality there, it took us some time, but Phil managed to get together a team of guys to be teaching sit and go. So, those of you who are in the MTT and sit and go world, go out there and check those out. We're also going to have like a 7-day free trial, which is something we've been lacking. The sit and go videos, I actually just leading up to the final table, watched one, because this has been in preparation for quite a while, watched a video from, I don't even know his full name, but I'm pretty sure his first name is Chip. I probably should, double check that, but whatever, I guess I'll, just say that. In any case, I watched one of them, and it seriously is a really, really good video. Yeah, it is. It's Chip Ferguson. I just looked it up while I was talking. I watched it probably 3 or 4 times, and I already think I'm, pretty knowledgeable when it comes to that stuff. I'm no sit and go pro, but decent with shove fold ranges and stuff. Just not only did he present it well, but he explained it very well. It's what we look for at Blue Fire. He showed the process that he goes through in order to confirm or deny whether or not he's making good decisions. So yeah, props to all that stuff, and the new stuff coming out. It's pretty exciting, and you guys should check it out. Awesome. That was a pretty long spiel.
Cool. That was good. Good sales job. Very nice.
I do legitimately think the site is great. So.
Well,
awesome.
Brett said it best. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy. Congratulations on the success. And I don't know, keep it up. Now that you got the tournament bug, let's do it again.
Yeah, sounds good to me. I actually grinded tournaments yesterday. It was a big Sunday. With a number of tournament series starting and ending and all this kind of stuff, and didn't have any deep runs yesterday, but I think I'm allowed a little bit of run bad before I start complaining again. So yeah, I'll definitely be playing more tournaments, but I'm also really excited to get back to playing cash games. I've been playing cash games for a long time now, and they're still my favorite form of poker. And I've barely played in 4 months, 5 months. So I'm pretty pumped to get back to grinding. I got to remember what it's like to bring in big months just playing, online cash games. And usually that stuff's a little more rewarding because it doesn't feel like a one-off lucky thing, So I'm excited to do that.
Very nice.
All right, well, that's Jason Senti. Of course, good luck in the future, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys, for having me on. Appreciate it, and hopefully I'll see you guys around soon. Maybe not till Vegas next summer, huh?
For sure.
For sure.
For sure. Thanks,
Take
Jason.
care, Jason.
Yeah, thanks.